Welcome to the Tech in Shanghai podcast, the Pearl of the Orient. Shanghai is the city of the future. All systems go, full steam ahead. It never stops. Technology, innovation, ambition. It's everywhere. Join us as we explore this new world and talk to the people making it happen. The Tech in Shanghai podcast. The future is now.
We're back, people. Tech in Shanghai podcast. I'm your host, John Vallis, and this is the show that brings you everything tech and startup from the great city of Shanghai. Last week we had Tony Gu. Tony is the organizer of Drink Entrepreneurs, a great initiative here that's trying to bring people together in the community, kind of innovate the infrastructure, bring the foreign community, bring the Chinese local community together, and try to see what can come of that. So if you're interested in learning more about that, check out last week's episode. But today, we have a very special episode. First time we've had three people in the studio. We've got Todd Embley here, a good buddy of mine, who's going to serve as kind of co-host and interesting guest. And we've got Michael Young of Agada, who is a recent graduate of the Chinaccelerator accelerator program. So before we get too much into this, Todd, I was going to see if you wanted to break down Chinaccelerator and give us kind of an umbrella what we're going to be talking about. So I know how much you love talking about what Chinaccelerator does. So why don't you hit us with the 5-minute version?
Okay, the 5-minute version. Well, Chinaccelerator is an accelerator program based on the Techstars model. We are part of the Global Accelerator Network, and it is the first seed-funded, mentorship-driven accelerator program in China. We started, the first batch kicked off September 1st, 2010. We just finished batch 5, as we'll find out. We are accepting applications right away into batch 6 now. We recently relocated from Dalian down to Shanghai, which was a great move. It's been awesome down here, and I'm very excited to help continue promoting the entrepreneurship community and helping raise the level of the water here in Shanghai. It was founded by Cyril Ebersweiler and is backed by SOS Ventures, which is a USD fund from back in America. I think, and I'm hoping a lot of the people that are listening are probably at least interested enough in tech and the entrepreneurship world to understand what an accelerator program is. So,
right.
Heavily based on the mentorship part. So we try not to go too heavy on the cash, give people enough money to live and to grow their business, do some outsourcing, some marketing, some hiring, whatever they need to do. But most of it is built off of the mentorship. And we have an amazing group of 85 mentors strong, most of them listed on our website. Great partnerships with People Squared, CBI China Bridge, which is kind of the IDO for China, for those who don't know it. Angel Vest, which is a group of angels, 85 strong as well, who are all interested in investing in China and Asia at large, as well as Silicon Valley Bank and Cooley LLP. So, with those 5 pillars of support, plus all our mentors of famous entrepreneurs and VCs and angels from around China, we just have an amazing network that can help any company, big or small. You've got a beta, you got a product, you don't, you just got an amazing team, whatever it is, apply to the program. We can help accelerate you to success.
Cool. And actually, last week on the show, we were talking with Tony. Tony was also there at the demo day, I guess almost 2 weeks ago now?
2 weeks ago, exactly.
Right. So, I mean, it was a great event, huge turnout. I'm sure you guys had to turn away some people. And this was the first time you opened it up to the public, right?
Yeah. That was a bit of a change, a bit of a shift. Typically, it's just for investors or media. But now that we're in Shanghai, we really want to play a bigger part in growing the entrepreneur community here. And I think part of that drove the decision to open it up to allow those that are already involved in the entrepreneurship community, people who are involved with different organizations like Drinks Entrepreneur or the Techie Zoo and Transist and Startup Weekend, Lean Startup Machine, Bar Camps, all the people who have been struggling to try and build this great community for, in which we can all enjoy and grow. We wanted to invite all of them to come as well. And kind of it's just a big celebration of entrepreneurship. We had a lot of people show up, as you said. The lineup was down the block and around the corner, which was really cool to see. There was great energy in the room.
Yeah.
everybody put on a great show. I was really proud of all the teams, how hard they worked, the great pitches they put on. And you know what? Again, we hope that we raised the level of the water, raised the awareness, and got everybody excited and inspired, and really helped the Shanghai scene just grow even more.
Yeah, and I think you definitely accomplished that. But I'm just interested in knowing the difference. I mean, you've done some of these demo days in Dalian, right? And I think you did one in Beijing as well.
We've done them all in Beijing.
All in
before.
Beijing, okay.
Yeah.
And how does the energy and vibe differ when you have only people directly involved and VCs and angels versus those people plus the public and the community? It seemed like a lot of fun this demo day.
Yeah, and that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind.
Right.
Is that it seems a lot more serious. There's not as much fun, electric atmosphere in the room. And I think the entrepreneurs and the founders feel that when they're on stage, they might be a little more rigid.
Right.
But in this case, no, they were pretty loose. They were having some good fun. They were engaging the crowd. There was a lot of, cheers and clapping and support just, echoing around the room while they were pitching. It just had a greater vibe. So I think overall, it's definitely something we're going to keep doing. We're going to do this every time going forward. There's no way that you can replace that. And I don't want to go back to the old model that just seemed a little stuffier.
Yeah.
We're pitching for money, and then on the other side, the people sitting there, they have money and they're being very critical. And it just wasn't as much fun.
Yeah.
And really, entrepreneurship is just about having fun.
Sure. And I can see this event being much bigger, even the next time you do it. So the end of the next batch, I mean, you could barely, everyone was standing up in the back. There was no room for people to sit. So I think next time you guys might have to do a bigger venue or something.
I hope so.
Because it's going to be big.
I hope so. I thought everybody I've talked to had a great time. Really enjoyed it and learned something, and it was great networking. And we hope that we actually showed a lot of people how to pitch properly.
Right.
More, Silicon Valley style.
Sure.
Of really what's expected and how to put on a show properly here. So doing our part to, contribute and give back to the community and help make it better.
Yeah, which is great. That's what we're doing with the show, and that's what more people need to be doing to cultivate something here, because Shanghai has something special for sure, and there's special people here. We just need to bring it all together.
True.
Now, I'll come back to that later because I want to get more into the kind of the ins and outs of the program and the recent graduates.
Sure.
But obviously, Michael just came out of the program, gave, in my opinion, the best presentation of the demo day. It was on point, it was clear, and he represented his company amazingly, I thought. So, Michael, why don't you let our listeners know first, a little bit about yourself and Agada, and then we can get the ball rolling with how the whole participant director accelerator program kind of worked out for the both of you.
All right, I'll do my best here. You can't see me. I'm actually Chinese American. I've been in Shanghai for about a year, and prior to this, I was a U.S. diplomat for 10 years, and I served in about 4 or 5 different countries. Prior U.S. Army as well, and just decided to come to Shanghai because I've been doing the whole big government corporate type of thing so long that I wanted the control of my life back. So I decided to come to Shanghai and explore opportunities here. So Agada, why Agada? Originally, the idea was to create an online marketplace for international medical services so that no matter where you were in the world, third world country or China, and you were looking for the best doctor, you could get on this website and find that person. And we wanted to start with China because originally, and still, my mother is a Mandarin Chinese translator in the San Francisco Bay Area, translating for patients at UCSF, Stanford University Hospital, and so on and so forth. And she said to me, Michael, there are tons of Chinese coming to America for medical treatment. They all have a ton of cash. They don't really speak English, and they don't really understand the U.S. medical system. Why don't we actually go to the source and find these people and build a business that way? So I ended up in China, in Shanghai. We built out the website. We built the copy in 2 different languages, and then ran into the problem of actually how do you convince these patients this is the best product for them? And so I kind of put the brakes on the business for a little bit, didn't know how to go about it, and then I discovered Chinaccelerator, and I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity to put down roots into China, get into the tech community, learn how to do this outreach, get support from the advisor network and from the other teams that are going to be there so we can share best lessons learned, best practices, and to solve the problem of marketing for American healthcare providers looking for Chinese patients. So that was the genesis, the seed of Agada. And that's we got accepted on that idea. We got in, and then we had to pivot actually a couple times.
So what's the current incarnation of Agada?
The current incarnation, instead of actually getting Chinese patients to physically visit America, we're looking at the second opinion market, meaning instead of having Chinese physically fly, using technology to gather their information in China, cancer patients actually in China who've actually already gone through a number of healthcare providers, they need additional information, they don't know what to do with their sickness, we'll take their information, send it to specialists in America, handle the translation as well as the interpretation, provide the information back to the Chinese patient so they can make better informed decisions going forward.
Okay. And since your great presentation on Demo Day, have you taken a breather? You taken a step away from a bit just to get your breath? Because I know that the accelerator program can be quite taxing. And have any good conversations resulted from the program? And where do you kind of see it moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it was an intense 90 days. It was almost like being in boot camp. I did boot camp back in Fort Sill, and afterwards, you just need about a week or two to kind of unplug and veg out and just be a couch potato for a little bit. But we're definitely back at the back at the workstation here to drive this thing forward.
Right. Cool. So a lot of people listening, like I said earlier, they're going to be, entrepreneurs potentially with a good idea, a great team, maybe they want to come to China and execute, their dreams. We've got someone who sifts through thousands or hundreds, if not thousands of applications before these programs, and someone who's actually applied to one. First, Mike, I mean, when you applied to the program, how did you determine what you should include in your application, apart from, of course, what they stipulate on the Chinaccelerator website? But, what did you think would set you apart? How did you go about that process?
I had a couple conversations with the folks in Shanghai who were involved in the tech community, and that actually was a huge help. Just to have someone to talk to, someone who had already been on the ground for a number of years. But, beyond that, you just kind of have to be yourself. I mean, you kind of can't BS your way through this. I think Todd's got a pretty sharp eye for that. So, you got to be who you are and just get some information from the folks who are on the ground to help inform how you put yourself forward.
Right. And when you did apply, were you kind of thinking, I've got this idea, I've put a bit of work into it, but I need structure around it, I need contacts, I need mentorship, I need, a lot more things to put on it. An accelerator program would be ideal because they'll give you that in spades in a very short period of time?
Absolutely. I mean, I was, don't forget, I was in government for the past 10 years. And in my previous employment, I couldn't talk to anyone about entrepreneurship. They thought I was crazy for wanting to leave my cushy government job.
Sure.
But Chinaccelerator was exactly that vehicle that I needed. I needed that. It was a support network. It was the mentorship, the information. It was the funds and the office space. It was the environment I needed to be in order to get to that next level.
Right. And how instrumental, or how much does it impact you as an entrepreneur and a founder? How much does it impact you to have all those different people, in your environment, other founders, other entrepreneurs working day in and day out on their own projects? Does it distract you? Is it a supportive sort of atmosphere of environment? What's it like?
I think it's everything at the same time. You have to be in the environment. If you look at where you want to be at, you've got to put yourself into that environment. And if there are distractions there, you got to learn how to deal with it because they're going to be there anyways. It's the new world, and you just got to be there and just kind of work your way through it. So
cool. And Todd, for you, I mean, you're the one who looks at all these applications, I guess, with some other people on your team and behind the accelerator program. First of all, for this last batch in particular, roughly how many did you get, just so the audience can know kind of what they're up against? And what are you looking for specifically? Both, in print, you say you have to include this, and this, but also when you're looking at it, you say, yeah, that one's crap. This one I'm going to look further into. What are you really looking for, and how do you make that selection?
All right. Well, we probably saw, went through, read about 200 applications from varying sources. We're looking for team first. The road is long and it is hard and it is wrought with pitfalls. It takes a special kind of person to be able to persevere and go the distance. And not even the type of person, but even the relationship, the team, is so important. So we look for things like the unfair advantage, which is experience, knowledge, expertise in the industry or the tech side. Just those who really understand the pain point. We look for the passion. People who, Michael has a very, I'll call it an easy path to the passion, because why he was doing this was very personal to him, and that is really something that you can latch on to. And Accelerator is kind of an investor, because we're investing into each of these startups. So we're looking at it as a potential investment, because if we're going to sink some money and a heck of a lot of time and effort and resources in putting our name, not only personally but our brand name onto you, this is very important for us. So there's a lot of makeup. Then there's the skills, just as far as like a tech skills, business development skills, knowledge, network. There's an understanding of entrepreneurship that I try to dig into a little bit. It tells me how far or not so far the team is going to have to go in actually understanding the entrepreneurship world, because if you're entering it for the first time, can be difficult. There's a lot of things that you need to learn. If you're up to speed, if you're listening to podcasts such as Tech in Shanghai, or if you've read other books that are very important in entrepreneurship, or you follow certain people on Twitter, or you just kind of speak the lingo and you get it, and you attend different events, whether it's Startup Grind or Startup Weekend or, things like this, and you're just kind of actively participating in the community as well. That's a great sign. It's a little bit less work that I have to do on my end. At some point, then it is about the solution. And we call it a solution more than an idea, because ideas are a dime a dozen. I think I already had, 10 or 12 good ideas this morning. So, they come and go very, very easily, and everybody's always got an idea, but I mean, it comes down to execution and hard work. And then, we look at the space, the potential. Are you trying to grab market share? Are you going into a niche part of an existing market? Are you actually creating an entirely new market? So what is the opportunity that's there? So we got the people, we got the opportunity, and then we look at the path, and how do you propose to do what you want to do? And so, we say we're looking for POP. We're looking for people, opportunity, and then the path. And if we see with our, more experience and our knowledge of the various spaces, and how things are going to go, because, we've been through it, we've seen it 100 times. If we believe that, all the possibilities are there, that, barriers to entry, aren't so bad, but then you have some good defensibility of what you're going to do, plus you're the right people to be doing it, and you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not being an entrepreneur because you want to be rich, or because I don't like working for other people, I want to be my own boss, or, I want to wear flip-flops and drink lattes and bring my dog to the office, or whatever the hell it is that is driving you to want to be an entrepreneur. You've got to be doing it for the right. You are an entrepreneur because you have to be, because you can't live another day without solving this problem that exists. You just have to do something about it. And so you're going to quit your job. You're going to go out and try and create the solution to a pain point that you have experienced, that you have lived with, and you're just going to go out and solve that problem come hell or high water. And that's what we can get behind. There's a lot of the other stuff that we can do to help make you successful. We'll give you money, we'll give you support, financial services, legal services, the whole 9 yards. What we need from you is a passion to solve a solution that we believe has scalable potential globally.
Right. And you make a good point, because Mike and I were talking before you came in about, the startup community is growing so quickly. And obviously there's a lot of legitimate people engaging in the community because they want to, be a part of it. They want to engage in startups. They want to solve these problems. But it's become a really sexy industry to be in. Yeah. The start, like you mentioned, you bring your dog to the office, you wear flip-flops, you do all this kind of, exactly. And what I think people, amidst the, the media, the tech news where you hear so-and-so got a Series B funding round of $50 million. Amidst all that, which is really jazzes you up, makes you excited and say, oh, if I got this idea, I got this great team, let's go and make it happen. It kind of gets lost that a lot of the best companies around and the companies that you now see as successful, they've been doing this for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And they've been putting every ounce of capital, time, energy, emotion, blood, sweat, and tears into these things to make it happen. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of one of those things that doesn't seem like it's for the faint of heart, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, China is a very different animal than the Valley, but in America or in Europe, they've been doing this for quite a bit longer. Okay, mm-hmm. So and we actually have some data that we can now pull. So there was a new fund that was started called Cowboy Ventures. I believe it was out of Texas, and so they took the data from 2003, 2013. So you had like Crunchbase and things like AngelList and stuff like this that have all come up. So there was a lot of data there that they could finally crunch 10 years worth of numbers. And some interesting things that came out of it were the average age of a company that experiences a liquidity event, which is either going IPO or getting acquired, mm-hmm. basically where founders and investors finally end up getting paid.
Right.
The average age is just a hair over 7 years old. Mm-hmm. I think that's a little bit surprising for a lot of people. Like, holy crap! Like, it's going to take 7 years for me to actually, be able to get paid on what I'm doing. And then you think about, okay, well, how much? It's like going to you could pay to go to school and be a doctor.
Right. What's the opportunity cost while you're doing it?
Yeah. What's the ROI on this time that I'm going to spend and put into this?
Right.
I could go maybe make $100,000 a year for 7 years, or I could go and make probably close to nothing,
right,
and just survive for 7 years, but then potentially have a big payday. It's not as financially viable as a lot of people think. Mm-hmm. And so, take that part of the sexy away from it. The other one was, the age of founders that were starting the companies that were more successful, and the average age was just over 30 years old. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a misnomer to think that people are
in their early 20s.
Yeah, I'm 22 years old and came out, I'm Mark Zuckerberg,
right,
or something that came out with this great idea. No, I mean, the 30-year-olds are actually the ones that have the life experience and the knowledge, and the core competencies, the unfair advantage to be able to do something successful.
Right.
And the other one that was a little bit surprising is better performing startups are actually non-tech. But everybody only focuses and talks about tech because that's what's sexy. And I think in your daily lives, using your phone, or your iPad or whatever, and apps and all this kind of, that's more relevant to you potentially, mm-hmm. than, the local gourmet foodie truck that's rolling around, that's actually making way more money than any of these apps or games that are being developed.
Right.
But
it's probably about the lure of the scalability of the tech market, right? Because you start up a Mr. Wiener's on the corner and they might be great dogs and people love it after a night of drinking. Mm-hmm. But you can't really scale that, or you can't really scale it too quickly. Whereas I think part of the sexiness, the attractiveness of the tech market is obviously you could, if you really hit your stride, then within however long period of time, you could have tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people engaging in your product, improving their lives in some way, and also the financial rewards that come with accessing such a massive market, right?
Yeah, it's more of a moonshot, but
right.
If you're willing to go for it.
Yeah, definitely more the exception than the rule, right?
Sure.
Sure. Not everyone can be Google or Twitter.
Yeah. And I think, Mike, you can speak on this a bit, but before you get going in pursuing a startup dream like you're currently doing, do you get these warning shots like from family members, from other people in the business community, from government, from your colleagues? Are they like, hey, Mike, don't do it, man. There's too much failure. It's too much work. There's not enough money.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it took me honestly 3 years to get to the point where I personally felt comfortable enough walking away from my salary, and with family and friends and colleagues thinking that I was absolutely crazy.
Right.
And to this day, they still ask, well, when are you coming back?
Right.
And I say, well, I'm not. And they don't quite get it. Mm-hmm. So, definitely not an easy thing to do.
Now, Todd mentioned something, when he's looking at applications, or when the team is looking at applications, obviously, dedication, a reason why you're going to stick this out and make it a success is primary among the things that they're considering and they're looking at when they're vetting all these applicants. If I can, if you're comfortable with it, during your presentation, you illustrated beautifully and very impactfully to the audience why this is an important venture for you. And so from a presentation perspective, and I think it's something that, maybe a lot of people doing presentations overlook the importance of, but you showed the audience, and in particular, and most importantly, the investors, why you are going to stick this out. Why it doesn't matter how many iterations you have to go through, how many pivots. It's something that, is very, very, very important to you and is a huge problem in your life. And if it's something that you can fix, then, a lot of people, including your own family, will be better off. So do you mind talking about why you're so, into it, so passionate about it?
Yeah. I mean, well, the name of the game is to stay alive, right? Stay alive and quality of life and be healthy as long as you possibly can. Out of my 4 grandparents, 3 got cancer, 2 with leukemia, 1 with liver cancer. My father just got diagnosed with leukemia a couple of months ago. My mother happens to be a Mandarin translator for hospitals in the Bay Area. And it looks like my chances of getting cancer, given genetics, are actually pretty good. And so I decided to tackle this problem. And the more that I got into it, the more fascinating this issue became. And it really has a lot of visceral meaning for me because it's about saving lives, and it's something that has to do with my family and potentially for me. So in a way, I'm kind of creating my own solution to a problem that I might have coming up.
And what, again, that's the reason why you're so committed to it. But just to focus a little more on Agada, I mean, what has both the response in the market, to your target market been? And also, I mean, healthcare is such a highly regulated industry everywhere you go. Can you just give us a bit of example of some of those hurdles that you might have encountered or had to cross in executing, this solution that benefits your family and countless others?
Yeah, huge hurdle, huge cultural barrier. If we look just at China and the United States, hospitals in the first tier cities, we say, Beishangguang in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, overwhelmed with patients that are streaming into the cities looking for quality healthcare, and a system that's unable to provide that service because, honestly, the government has regulated the prices. The healthcare prices have to be low, and they're not reimbursing the hospitals. So doctors are under tremendous stress to service this population. We have expertise available in America that could solve a lot of these problems, but there's such a huge cultural barrier between the two countries that providing that service ends up being very, very customized. You really have to understand kind of the local patient and consumer behavior. And at the same time, you have to educate the experts and the suppliers in America that when you provide the service, you can't provide it like you're providing it to an American or a Westerner. It's got to be done for a local Chinese person.
Right.
So we're working through that patient journey and supplier journey to see how we can make that mesh.
And I noticed from your website, I mean, you're working with top-notch hospitals in the U.S. You've got Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic. I mean, when you establish relationships with these guys, what's that process like? I mean, and how enthusiastic are they for a service like Agada's?
Yeah, well, in full disclosure, we did reach out to them. We featured them on our site, and we're going to be in the process of contacting them about this opportunity. But the conversations I've had with Western doctors and in the States, as well as ones who have actually been here in China, it's actually very difficult for them to provide the services they typically do to a Chinese patient. One example I give is a Chinese patient coming into a Western-style cancer clinic in Shanghai and being told that that patient, he needs to take 4 weeks of chemo in order for him to finish his treatment. He comes into the second week, he takes his chemotherapy and says, you know what, I feel great, I'm leaving. And the doctor says, actually, no, you're not done. You need to finish this as well. And the patient says, well, why should I pay you extra money if I feel good already? And actually never comes back. So you kind of can't force the patient to adhere to your treatment methods, even though it's tried and true. So how do you, as a Western doctor, how do you deal with that?
Right.
What are your expectations?
Yeah, big cultural differences in the service like this that you have to encounter. Have you guys piloted any people engaging in this service yet? And if so, what has the outcome been?
Yeah, we've dealt with a number of patients in the San Francisco Bay Area. They typically they don't like paying for information. They like the free consultation. And once they get the free consultation, they tend not to come back, or they tend to try to get additional free services. So that kind of payment gateway and that patient management gateway is going to be pretty critical for us to figure out. And
is it primarily a higher end luxury market that you guys are targeting?
Obviously,
just based on the costs that are associated with everything.
I mean, the mission is to help people, period. Right. Unfortunately, in that segment of the market, it's going to have to be people who have the ability to cover the cost of the treatment. So that is what we're looking at the moment.
And how do you get at your market? You know, and let's just say for now that the market that is available to Agada is, you know, higher end market rather than lower end. Obviously in China, there's a tremendous amount of interest from all multinational and local brands, domestic brands, to access the luxury market and the higher end market because it's growing so quickly and they have so much clout and so much capital behind them. Is there a specific way that you're breaking into that market? Are you partnering up with any other guys, or are you just trying to do it all organic right now?
I think most of the players are doing it organically. The ones who are using actually online marketing through, you know, Baidu or their own websites, they spend quite a bit of money doing it. But in fact, for Chinese patients, 80% of all patients are through referrals. So Western clinics who get these patients, you know, 80% of them are through, you know, friends of other patients.
Right.
So it's basically being able to, you know, weather the market, to be around long enough to be known, to earn the trust of patients, and really to kind of you know, utilize that word of mouth later on down the line.
Right.
So no, not an easy market.
Cool. So Todd, I wanted to ask you again, back to the demo day, huge success, obviously, but when we define success in something like this, it's not just the vibe that you bring to it, not how much people enjoyed it or how much free coffee there was or the after party. How many of the companies in the batch had good conversations with investors and are going to be, you know, pushing things forward from there? I mean, I know that's probably an initial conversation, so maybe even at this point, 2 weeks later, there's not too much that's been ironed out, but how good were the conversations afterwards?
Well, I wasn't a part of them, but from what I've gathered from post chats with a lot of people, I think there were, you know, 5 or 6. We had 9 for reference pitch at Demo Day.
Right.
We had 10 enter the program, and then we had 9. We can talk about later what tends to happen sometimes in the middle of the program where teams flame out or there's co-founder issues. But I mean, there's probably 5 or 6 that are going to be receiving some initial funding.
Right.
Now, of course, how much depends on where they're at and what they're looking for.
A lot of stuff, yeah.
You know, so, I mean, you know, somebody with a robust system and quite a few founders and their needs to scale are a lot more cash intense. So they are raising more money. Others are actually taking a bit of a different approach because they see that in maybe 6-7 months down the road, they could actually have a much higher valuation. They just want to do a couple more things to just get in a bit of a better position. So they don't want to give away too much of the farm right now and raising some money early. They would almost just like a bit of a bridge financing to get to the next 7 and 9 months out, and then do a big raise because their valuation and their numbers are going to be much, much better.
Right.
So they can do a bigger valuation, potentially get much, much more money for the same equity delivery, you know, as they would now. So, they all have very, very different approaches. But, you know, we had a lot of really good VCs, in the audience. It was actually kind of funny because Armin Zan, from Silicon Valley Bank came over and gave me a big congratulations and everything whatnot. And I said, it's, thanks, but, we haven't actually started yet. It's about 15 minutes to show. And he says, no. He's like, I know a lot of the people in this audience and I know who they are and I know the firms they work for and I know the checks they can write. So,
well done.
You know, this is already a big success. And
right.
So that was cool. So, you know, there were some very, very good, very meaningful conversations. And, you know, it's so interesting to see right afterwards and the VCs kind of scatter off to go run and talk to their favorites. And, you know, I must have talked to a dozen of them, at different times. And they, you know, just them saying, well, you know, this was my favorite, and they all had completely different favorites. And it depends what kind of space. I mean, a lot of these funds kind of say, well, this year we're going to get into clean tech and travel, or we're going to be in health and education,
right.
or, you know, where they just kind of have their spaces that they want to concentrate on. So different, you know, the different startups kind of, if they meet that, then they get chased pretty hard. So,
Right.
You know, people out there who should know, who haven't raised money before, it takes, I would say, at least 3 months before you're going to see any money. So know that going into any kind of raising venture where you're going to start the process and go through the vetting and start knocking on doors. And you know, even if you have a term sheet, you're still probably 2 to 3 months away from actually receiving cash.
Right.
So bear that in mind. So it is going to take some time, and it's a balancing act. So you get one, you're always looking for that lead investor, the one who's going to actually take a board position, who's going to negotiate the terms. And then the passive investors who are just going to, let the lead dictate how the term sheet ends up, and how the process goes and all the details and the numbers, involved. So, you get one, and then that one attracts maybe one other, and then you get another one that comes in. And then based on whoever you have at the table, then maybe one of them will up, and then another one ups. And, eventually you kind of, you're putting some people at the table and they're discussing, they're looking across the table who else is involved in the round. And then they up their amounts, and eventually you kind of, massage it all together so that you eventually reach, the number that you're looking for. And, it's always better to be oversubscribed than undersubscribed. So you get a lot of suitors, and it'd be great if you actually had to turn some VCs down.
Right. Now, Mike, you're going through this process right now, and as Todd was mentioning, I'd like to get your take. Some people, even in their demo 2 weeks ago, they kind of outlined some of their terms or portions of their term sheet, whereas you took the approach, you're not going to present numbers or outline a commitment that you're trying to get. You want people to be on board with the passion and the purpose behind the project that you're working on. But I wanted to ask you, when you come out of a program like that, if you do have good conversations with investors, how do you determine how much you should give away, what valuation you're at, what kind of investors you should take on board, and 100 other questions that are involved in actually confidently engaging in an investor and taking one on board that it's not going to stifle you down the road, but it's going to give you enough to keep the train going. And just all the things around that. I'm sure there's mentors throughout the program that can give you pointers and really help a lot with that. But how do what's it like trying to select an investor, presuming you have the luxury of actually, having that problem? What's it like trying to figure out how much you should give away and all the other decisions involved in that?
Well, it's very, very tough, especially for someone who doesn't come from that startup background, which is why being part of Chinaccelerator was so great, because you got all these other teams around you who are going through the same thing. And you have access to people who can give you advice, and their advice may differ from the other mentor, but at least you have a frame of reference and you can kind of bounce ideas off of people. For me personally, it's very important that I work with somebody who gets what I'm doing, not just someone who wants a return 36 months later. That's not what I'm in this for. And the fear also is that if I take on someone who kind of doesn't get it, they can adversely influence, the direction of the company.
Right. Misaligned incentives.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
And how do you go about that process? I mean, do you leverage the resources that Chinaccelerator provides and books and magazine articles and everything you can find to try to figure out like what that ideal partner is?
Yeah. I mean, it's, the books, of course, is always a good place to start. You should actually probably read as much as you can before you start any accelerator. But once you get in, using the advisor network there, the people who give the presentations, pinging them with the questions that you have, and you should have those questions written out, or at least in the back of your head. And then once you get that, kind of check in with your colleagues, with other teammates to see where they're at and how they're dealing with the issue.
And this actually, Todd, back to what you said earlier through the application process, right? So this is something that first-time entrepreneurs will encounter, and it'll be fresh. That even if they're getting great mentorship, they'll still be wondering, should I trust this guy? I mean, I don't know if he's giving me right advice. What's his bias? Is he working for the other team or whatever? Whereas if you see on an application for an accelerator that someone's been through, 3 startups already, and this is something we talked about last week on the program with Tony, in that fail often, fail better, and in this community, that's kind of one of the things that's nice about it, maybe why people are drawn to it a bit, is because failure isn't considered a negative thing. It's just considered a bump in the road. And the next time you give it a crack, you're going to have more confidence in every step you make. So when you're looking at applications, is that a huge component of whether or not you take people on, like someone fresh with a good idea and a good team versus, wow, this guy's been, for the last 6 years, he's had 2 or 3 different startups and now he's back.
Absolutely. There's just an experiential knowledge, having gone through, battle. They're just battle tested. And, for entrepreneurs, the scar tissue from battle turns into their armor and just makes them so much more tough. And they
That's
also
such a nice metaphor. Well done.
their speed of engagement is greatly heightened, which I really noticed a difference between the entrepreneurs who have been there, done that once or twice before, even unsuccessfully, still are so much faster and more efficient at engaging mentors right away, being able to make quick decisions, whether it's pivoting or just directional or hiring or whatever it is. They're just so much faster. They can glean so much more mission critical stuff towards what they're building, and being able to ignore the white noise of everything else that's coming in, to be able to concentrate. They just know how to attack with laser focus much better. And I mean, I'm all over that. I love, if you failed like 5 or 6 times, then okay, maybe we actually need to look at why you just keep failing and you don't seem to be able to be successful. But any investor will tell you that their favorite people to invest in are people that they invested in previously who failed, who are now doing something again, and are coming back and knocking on their door again. They're definitely in, one, because they kind of want to recoup the cost of the education, the entrepreneur that they basically paid for in the entrepreneur the first time around. And second, because they just know that they're now investing in a much smarter person. Right. Because they've been there.
Cool.
Yeah, I really have to agree with that. I mean, it's having gone through it and not even failed. I mean, there's no such thing as a failure, right? It's there. We've learned.
Good point.
And so it's, You can't win on first time go all the time. In fact, that's probably the exception again rather than the rule.
Right.
True.
Give it a few swings. Don't get discouraged. Keep going. And if you're tenacious and if you're smart about the lessons learned and about the mistakes that you made, eventually you'll be successful.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
good advice.
It's very true. I mean, especially for some of the guys that do win the first time, they're almost trouble.
Yeah, I want to meet them.
Yeah, well, and the trouble with them is that, they were born on third base and yet they think they hit a triple. They got insanely lucky, and the chips kind of fell their way, and they expect it to go like that every time. So, there's an uncomfortable learning curve in front of them, which I have to try and delicately walk them through the second time if they're in the program, saying, hey guys, this was all the work that you probably by right should have gone through the first time. And now you're about to go through it. So, let me just warn you that, try and forget how easy things were before, because it's you simply got lucky. That's not the norm.
Right. So whether, as Michael was saying, failure is not failure. Failure is not final. And you always have a chance to learn from it and go back. So whether you kind of front end load the failure and then hit your stride later, or get lucky initially and then have to encounter those hurdles later, it's kind of unavoidable in this industry, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So both of you, Mike, you're a participant in the latest batch. Todd, you're the director. You mentioned you started with 10, you finished with 9. Let's give the listeners an idea of what it's really like in the program for 3 months. I mean, it's all well and good to say it's fantastic. There's mentors and there's investors at the end and it's all great and we learn so much. But when you wake up every morning and you got to go into that place and there's personalities, competing personalities, some you like, some you don't like, a lot of stress, a lot of work. There's a timeline. What's it really like?
I got to let Michael say this, but I'm just going to preface it just a little bit in the beginning, just to say that there's everything. My role as director is it's very operational. Very, I'm a facilitator. I bring and I manufacture little micro environments for people to engage, learn, succeed, fail, whatever it is. I'm also a camp counselor. I'm a relationship advisor,
therapist.
A lot of times, I have to wear a lot of hats because the teams go through just a shitload of stuff during the program. So Michael can talk about his experience.
Yeah, I really got to give it to Todd. It's like trying to herd 20 cats.
I can imagine. You got 20, 30 people, all fairly young, really energized, really kind of open-minded, independent by nature, which
Very
is why
amped up,
which is why they find themselves there,
or what they perceive as their lives on the line.
So much ambition, so many hopes, and you've got to try to rein it all in and have it running in unison together. So I don't envy the job that you have in front of you sometimes. But Mike, why don't you tell us what it's really like as a participant?
It is a crucible. Again, I go back to the kind of boot camp basic training. You're thrown into an environment where you've got all different things, a ton of different stuff coming at you. You have your own aspirations and your own career goals as well as your personal goals. For instance, the kind of life that you want to mold for yourself. Do you want to bring your dog to work? Are flip-flops at work really that important to you? Or is it more important to you to figure out how you're going to work with your co-founder? And for you guys to agree on, equity sharing, on the strategy of the company, and then the actual execution of the tactics. How do you deal with the mentors that are useful, and how do you fold advisors and mentor into your equity sharing agreements? How do you politely say no to other advisors? How do you figure out what you don't know? How do you figure out what you do know and what you're good at so you can focus on that? So it's a good exercise because if you can survive in that environment, and if you can come out of it with lessons learned and still willing to go forward, I think that's a great experience for a person. Yeah,
it must be a huge asset just in terms of personal development, if nothing else. If something doesn't happen with the company, But what about those people that drop out? I mean, what's the common cause for dropping out? You don't have to name names, of course, but why? What happens?
I think often they either the market dictates. They weren't able to penetrate, and it just turns out that they just couldn't get there. Now, sometimes that's due to a shift in the market or the economics or the landscape on the whole. You're working on a ride sharing app, or maybe a taxi sharing app or something like this, or a taxi call app like a Didi Dacha or something like this. Before Didi Dacha or when it was here, and you're trying to do it, but you want to do something a little bit different. You want to get maybe a specialized car or something, and then shabam, Uber comes to China.
Right.
You're done. You're done. And it's over, next. And that can happen. Even if you're trying to do something in an Airbnb or something else. So those market shifts and things, which is why speed is incredibly important,
right?
Because things can change on a dime. So you need to go fast and go through.
And does that make the selection process harder with every batch because there are more larger companies out there doing so many more things that you get ideas that have already been done?
They create opportunities. They create markets. They're creating niches. They're creating technologies. They're expanding the idea of what's possible. So as much as they're entering the market, they're just raising the level of the water, and it's becoming a bigger birth of potential and possibilities. So,
right.
I think it's great. Welcome everybody to come in because they're all teaching us something, and they all have, different customer acquisition strategies or monetization strategies or things. And people are getting very, very creative in how they're doing this with their apps or their web portals or their platforms as a service or whatever it is. And so it's actually, giving you more and more options and new ideas, and is spawning off, spin-offs of all kinds of different things. So,
right.
It's actually really great.
Right. So back to the program a bit for a sec. How do you, and I'll ask you both this personally afterwards, but just as you, Todd, as the director, how do you keep not only cohesion in the group and keep everyone on point and on the same page and moving forward? How do you guys let off steam? How do you get them to kind of just take a chill pill and let off the gas pedal for a second? And I mean, not too long, of course, but how do you kind of remember that, life is short and you got to enjoy yourself in addition to striving to achieve great things?
I don't know. Michael can talk about this after his experience with it, because his was a very personal story, and because his company's name is Agada, and we go alphabetical order. So Mike unfortunately had to pretty much forge the path for everything that we did, because Agada was always up first.
What do you mean you go alphabetical order?
Like at the team name.
Oh, okay. So when you do events with the whole program?
Like for meetings, so what we do is on Friday afternoons, we try and, it's a no tech zone. for the most part. So around 3:30, we gather all together, and the first thing up is status checks. So everybody kind of talks open and honestly about where they're at, what's happened over the last 7 days, and then we try to help as an entire group. We have you've got 9-10 minutes in front of us, and our undivided attention to ask us questions, whether we're looking at a logo or you're kind of surveying us for responses, or you're asking us for introductions, or to reach out into our network for something, whatever it is. We just kind of dive in to see how can we as a collective group give you feedback or give you some sort of help on where you're at and what you're doing. And then we hope that you would in turn deliver us a learning that one of the learnings you've had over the last 7 days, in whatever area you want. So all the teams go through that. Then we take a quick break and we come back and we do founder stories. And this is a really cool thing. So we usually kick this up about 5 p.m. on Friday. We stock the fridge full of beers, which is pretty much always stocked full of beers for the program. Yeah. It has to be. I mean,
sure.
We're going to get beers in here for the podcast coming up pretty soon too. And then we all sit down, and actually the founders are actually responsible for providing some alcohol. Usually it's something traditional or native or just their favorite, something that means them. And they do a 30-minute individually, 30 minutes on their life. And we want to see, and it's all picture driven. The less text, the better. And we just want to see pictures of them growing up, where they're from, their family, and things that they did when they were younger, everything that has impacted them and helped shape and mold them, who they are today. We want to see it all. We want to hear all your stories. And some people get extremely personal and talk about all the very deep personal stuff that they've gone through. Other people keep it a little more light and fun and just funny pictures of them drinking and falling down and, throwing up on themselves or whatever. I mean, they different personalities go different direction, but it's nice, because obviously that drinking for, an hour and a half leads into Friday night more drinking usually, which kind of propagates a letting off of steam going through that. But It also is a great grounding, and it makes everybody real, and we all get to know everybody in the program very, very well and very deep. And I think it's just a really great kind of lightning rod that brings together the whole. At the end of the week, everybody gets grounded. So
do people in the program, Mike, you can speak to this a bit. I mean, do you come out of it with a bunch more really close friends? I mean, do you have the ability and time to form those relationships there?
Yeah. I mean, it's, over 90 days, you're kind of nut to butt with these guys.
Right.
You kind of get, can't get them out of your face. And you do come away with some very, very strong bonds. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to go back to that. It doesn't come without a price. Personality conflicts, especially between co-founders. Mm. Are you going to get pissed off your co-founder? Absolutely, you will. It's going to happen. There's going to be conflict. There was not a single team that didn't have an argument throughout the process. And I think it speaks volumes to the program that so many teams actually came through and stuck together as a team. So just, I guess, a word of advice to anyone who's looking to do a startup, understand that personal interaction is going to be something that you really need to actively manage and anticipate this conflict and to learn how to manage that properly so that you can both hit that mutually beneficial goal down the line. Yeah.
I think it's very important, and I mean, it's a little bit of, not really tooting my own horn, but at least the structure of how this was built, because you have to have, in my opinion, somebody like me who's there day to day, driving everything forward and putting everything together with Sophia, who's my partner in crime, and then just to be there to help kind of, mediate sometimes in some things and help bring people together. It's just one of the many thousands of differences between an accelerator and an incubator. It's just, you have to understand that the pressure you put these guys under, you now have to take a responsibility for that, and you have to be there. And I mean, there was a lot of occasions where I'm staying late, coming in weekends, early mornings, late night calls, all kinds of stuff, just kind of dealing and kind of calming everybody down and reassuring everybody that, it's a marathon, not a sprint, even though the program seems like a sprint, and to just take it day by day and keep the bigger picture.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that's like. I mean, just like we've already said, there's just so much at stake. People are so motivated. There's so much ambition there. There's so many conflicting personalities. It must be really a challenge. And again, credit to Todd and Chinaccelerator to be able to bring that all together and actually come out with 9 people on a demo day.
Nine teams and over 18 egos. Right. So,
right. Yeah, amazing. So, guys, we're coming up around the end of the show, but I always ask a question to the guys sitting in this chair or these chairs. And Todd, I'll hit you with it first because I'm going to make yours a little more specific. I always ask people, what's 3 pieces of advice that they could give to the audience, just in general, but obviously we're talking about tech and startup here. So, Todd, I was wondering, for people that are going to be applying to Chinaccelerator over the next month or 2, 3 pieces of advice, maybe beyond what we've talked about today, and it could even be personal. But what would you, what kind of advice would you give them to prepare them for success in getting into the program and success in the program?
Well, success getting into the program. It's amazing how much passion and persistence, how far that can go, and how many other potential, things that you don't have, whatever the word I'm looking for is for that is missing, how much that can overcome it. I want the purpose. I mean, it's the very first thing I'll ask anybody, just why are you doing this? Where did this come from? How did you meet your founders? How did you come up with this solution? What is the pain point? Tell me the pain point you're trying to solve, and why is it so fucking important to you?
Right.
Like that is immensely important to me.
So you don't just want to hear, I have a great idea and a great team. You want to hear, my entire family's been affected by it.
Everybody's got a great idea. Everybody can make their team look good. We'll see how effective you actually are in the program.
Right.
Because there's so many more variables to come. But if you all have that like deep down desire and passion to do this, we just know you're going to fight. You're going to fight, you're going to stick with it, and you're going to go for it, and that you're purpose driven, not profit driven, meaning that you just want to accomplish an overarching goal. And this would kind of lead into my second piece of advice, would just be, the purpose driven, not profit driven. Don't bring your ego, about what you think the solution should look like into the program. Leave that out of it. Your only goal is to solve the problem.
Right.
However it looks, however it works, however it acts, in whatever form it might be, you're just happy that it exists because that's the only goal that you have. You don't come in with all these ideas of how it's going to look and how it's going to work and, how you're going to onboard people because guess what? The only thing that I know with 100% certainty is that you're wrong.
Right.
Okay. It's not going to work. And the market and everybody's going to start beating the shit out of you and that idea. And the closer, the more attached you are to it, the harder it's going to be for you to let go and just let yourself ride the wave, which you just have to do. You're just opening up. I'm the guy that's going to solve the problem. And then you just go to the market and you tell me, what is it? How is it going to look? How do you want it? You just tell me, I'll build it.
Right.
And that's all.
Okay. Third piece of advice coming into the program. Try to leave your distractions at the door. If you're trying to do some sort of part-time work on the side, or you're trying to balance some other things that are going on, make sure that you're life ready coming into the program. Right.
Because it's just too difficult. You need to move to Shanghai. You need to set up shop here for at least the 3 months of the program. You and your co-founder, you both need to be in-house, and you both need to be there ready to work and 100% dedicated to just do it for 3 months. Go back and start trying to balance and juggle all those balls later. But for at least the 3 months of the program, give it 100% effort, and give it the old college try. Just make sure that there's nothing distracting you, because it seems like nothing, and it's exponentially going to get in your way during the program.
Cool, good advice. And how about you, Mike?
I'm actually going to say a lot of things that echo what Todd just said. Personally, for me, if you want to get into entrepreneurship, do something that you care about, that you can do every morning that you wake up, because you know what? You're going to be stuck with that, and you better like doing it. If you don't like doing it, you're going to burn out, you're going to drop it, and you're going to fail. The other thing is, even before you set out on the whole entrepreneurial path, read as much as you can about not just your domain, but actually about entrepreneurship and startups. Talk to as many people as you can who could give you information or knowledge about the problem that you're working on in order to prepare yourself for the undertaking. And lastly, the third thing is, please test your idea. You will save yourself time and money and grief and emotional drama. Test early, test often, make sure that there's traction there before you dive into something. Otherwise, you're just going to waste a lot of time and money.
Right. And that kind of echoes what Todd was saying in that, don't come with your solution, come with the problem. Let the testing, let the market dictate what the solution is ultimately going to be, right?
Yeah. And this is a piece of advice that gets put out there a lot, but a lot of people for some reason just don't follow it.
Yeah.
And me being one of them.
I mean, I can see how easy it is to get attached to that idea, that initial spark, that you said, this is going to be it. This is the next whatever. And you want to make that happen. And I think, Todd, you probably see this all the time, but you've got to kind of force people to let go of that. Like you said, check your ego at the door and just focus on that damn problem, and then let the market tell you how to figure that out.
Because people, when they're building something, they don't want to go out and have people say bad things about it.
Right.
It's like, I've been working on this for like a month, and I don't want people to say bad things about it. So I'm just going to keep doing it and then release it. That is so absolutely the wrong way. If you don't give a shit about what it looks like, it's like, I just want to solve the problem in the best way possible for as many people as possible.
Right.
Then it's like, okay, I made this. It's got one viable feature. It's just one thing. Well, here it is. What do you think? And then, okay. So, I mean, and I always like talking about the iPhone, because I thought that was probably one of the greatest examples of just, releasing something, far too early. But just to get customer feedback and start growing an organic customer base that starts to grow up with the product, which is also a great customer acquisition strategy. And then just release it. And I mean, Apple comes out with a phone. Everybody goes, what the fuck are you doing? This is awful. It's a terrible product. It does nothing right. And what are you doing in phones anyway? Get the hell out of the business. And then they come out with the iPhone 2. And it's like, they made some improvements. Why? Because everybody told them how horrible it was. And they just went, thank you. And then took all that advice and just put it in. I actually put it into the iPhone 3 because iPhone 2 was already getting ready to be released after iPhone 1 was made anyway. But, and then the iPhone 3GS and the 3GS comes out, and all of a sudden, this is a damn market leader all of a sudden.
Right.
And how did that happen so fast? Strictly because they kept releasing crappy products and just waiting for the feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, they've done all right, Apple. Yeah, with the iPhone.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
So basically, iterate and get feedback and keep doing that until
because you don't care what it looks like or how it works. You only care that people like using it, and lots of people will use it.
Right. Cool. Guys, any closing thoughts?
No clothing in here. This is a naked podcast.
Mike, where can people get a hold of you or Agada? Should they wish to?
www.agada.co.
Cool. And Todd, if they want to learn more about the accelerator, possibly apply for the next batch?
Yeah, Chinaccelerator.com. And then there's tabs for about and FAQs and apply.
All the other information.
Yeah.
Cool. And if you want to hear from us, guys, at Tech in Shanghai on Twitter, website coming soon. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you next time. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Tech in Shanghai podcast. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Tech in Shanghai for everything tech from Shanghai and China. See you next time.